the relay on YouTube. Check it out. Lots of stories about me on there. All the boxing facts and info that you want in a very entertaining, educational manner. The relay. Check it out on YouTube.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay where we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Well, a very stunning revelation involving the former WBC junior middleweight champion Eva Piatkowska and what she plans to do moving forward.
As a contender.
Portion of the article reads, "My first goal was kind of obvious. Everyone dreams of becoming a world champion when they put the gloves on for the first time. I achieved it, but it was nothing like what I expected. One day the opportunity just appeared, but there was one catch. It was 2 divisions higher than my natural weight. It seemed a little bit crazy since everyone cuts weight in boxing, but I decided to give it a go. I won, and since then it was quite hard to put on weight, which was mostly fluids, before each title defense, only to be in the ring weight interval. A few months ago I became a champion in recess, due to the long breaks between my fights. The title gives me the opportunity to fight a current champion, but I decided it's a good time to come back to my natural weight." The article specifies several things associated with Eva's move downstairs moving forward. That she wants to debut in America. She's been in contact with some managers here stateside, and the wheels are now in motion for her to make that move to 140 pounds, where she means to target the likes of the IBF champion, Mary McGee, the likes of the WBA and WBC champion, Jessica McCaskill, likely Cristina Linardo too, now that she's a champion at 140 once again. And I understand why Eva did what she did. I mean, if we're going to be fair and we're going to be objective, I get it. You got to look at the prescribed weight that Eva won the title in. She didn't win the title at the limit, you understand. She didn't weigh in at 154 pounds when she was contesting for the WBC title at junior middleweight. She came in at just above welterweight. I think it was a pound above. Wasn't a whole lot. And if you've seen Eva before, if you've seen her in action, you'll know that, yeah, based on body type, she's really not cut out to be up there. I mean, you can get creative, you can fight certain fights with certain opponents, but as far as being a natural junior middleweight, that's just not the case. She really is better suited for either 140 or 147. In that way, it's not bad news from where I'm sitting, because if Eva plans to integrate herself into the 140-pound division, the division itself becomes that much deeper as a result. It's already a division full of strong punchers and dangerous opponents, dangerous champions. Eva Piatkowska adding her name to that roster just makes it that much more dangerous, thus that much better for it. The talent pool is expanding at 140 pounds, and given Eva's dimensions, the fact that she's a statuesque, well-rounded boxer who's really athletic,
Good size punch,
she can definitely go down there and make a splash. She can quickly emerge as a force in the 140-pound division. All the world champions down there, they've got to batten down the hatches, because there's something serious coming their way. I want to say that I understand the move wholeheartedly.
I do.
I even sympathize with it a bit. But at the same time, if you're okay defending your title against the likes of a Maria Lindbergh who actually is a junior middleweight, a natural junior middleweight, though not being as statuesque as Eva. If you are okay fighting a fighter like that, that makes this move open to interpretation, perhaps even criticism. And the timing of the move to decide to vacate the title came at a time when Clarissa Shields was descending into the division. And people are going to say what they're going to say. They're going to think what they're going to think. Ultimately, I'm not against the move downstairs. I just think she waited longer than she should have to make it.
should have been moved down.
That this was a move you could have made a long fucking time ago. You deciding to make this move at a time when Clarissa's integrating herself into your weight class, well, it does look a certain way, doesn't it? But there is truth that Eva's not cut out to really campaign as a 154-pound fighter. She's just doesn't have the frame for it.
Not really.
Maybe that's her ceiling. Maybe in the future, she can get back up there. But here today, yeah, she really would be better off fighting at 140 or 147. So here's to the future of Eva Piatkowska in the 140-pound division, and what fights with what fighters will be made available to her. I have to say, I really do like the way 140 pounds is stacking up, all things considered.
been putting out about all he did was send you an offer because you're your own boss.
Only thing true about Eddie Hearn is that he's reaching out.
Okay.
All right? That's all I can say. But he's not. He's only reaching out so he won't look like the clown that's not, like, accepting what's going on. You feel me? He's like reaching out but don't really want to make that move, you know?
So he hasn't sent real offers? Has he sent numbers to you?
Look, let's break the ice, bro. Keep this. Eddie Hearn has reached out. He's not lying about that. He has reached out. The offer wasn't strong enough. I forwarded this shit straight to Al, Sylvia, the command team, the headquarters. They know what's going on. I'm told not to respond. All right? I'm told not to even feed into none of that shit.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Bro, Canelo the champ. Canelo, everything everybody else talking about. Like, I don't hear nobody else saying Demetrius Andrade or Danny Jacobs.
Well, I don't hear anybody talking about Brandon Adams or Dennis Hogan, but you were okay to fight those guys. I mean, look, there's not a lot of new ground to cover here. I want to take my hat off to Ak and Barak and their podcast for being able to gather this information, make it available to the boxing fans, and their contribution to the sport. And this is with respect for them that I say this, that we didn't need for Jamal Charlo to call into the show to find out all this stuff. We didn't need for him to call Ak and Barak to know that he is under strict orders from Al Heyman to not feed into Eddie Hearn's offers, to not consider what's on the table for him. Jesus Christ, I've been telling you guys this for days and weeks.
Yeah.
You've heard me say this before, and you're about to hear me say it again. Jamal Charlo, among others, wants to cast this air of suspicion, this air of doubt, over Eddie Hearn's offers, as if to say that the money's not real. But the money was real enough for Mikey Garcia. Mikey Garcia, whose next fight is on a DAZN side of the street. Mikey Garcia, who's actually been on pay-per-view before, where Jamal Charlo has not. So who is Jamal Charlo to question as to whether Eddie Hearn's offers are real or not? Whether or not the money is real or not.
Fuck out of here.
Eddie Hearn's money was real enough for Mikey Garcia. It was real enough for Andy Ruiz. It was real enough for Jose Ramirez, who's not even a PBC fighter, yet he crossed over to their platform to get his career high purse, his career high payday. So at this point, it is not a question of whether or not the offers are strong enough or the money is real enough.
It's real.
At this point, it's a question of how many lame excuses are we going to hear from Jamal Charlo and the people over there at the PBC.
I'm told not to respond. All right? I'm told not to even feed into none of that shit.
Mm-hmm.
All right?
And that's out of the horse's own mouth, folks. So there are very few mysteries left here to unravel, to uncover. That apparently Jamal Charlo thinks he's too good to fight the likes of a Demetrius Andrade and a Daniel Jacobs, but he didn't think he was too good to fight a Brandon Adams, a guy who's accomplished way less than those guys have. And he would have you believe that it's because, oh, well, nobody's talking about Daniel Jacobs. Nobody's talking about Demetrius Andrade. Well, nobody was talking about the guys you've been fighting, but you were okay to fight with them.
Aren't you?
So that's no excuse. If you're trying to skirt around something, if there is something here that Jamal Charlo himself and his handlers are trying to circumvent, it is risk. They don't want to run any risks. They don't want to exit their comfort zone and enter into situations where they don't have full agamonical control. Because if they do, things might go south for them. Even at the precipice of a multi-million-dollar payday, what would likely be a career-high purse for the likes of a Jamal Charlo, he still doesn't want to run any risks with Demetrius Andrade, because once you lose that O, you don't get it back. And these guys, well, they're in the business of protecting their O's. I mean, you'll notice the stance that he's taking in regards to what are bigger, more accomplished names in the middleweight and super middleweight divisions than his own. Daniel Jacobs has swapped punches with both Canelo Alvarez and Gennady Golovkin. Demetrius Andrade, while he doesn't have those fights under his belt, he's a two-division champion like you're a two-division champion. And much like you, he needs a dance partner with a name. But you want to act better than that guy. Why? Is beyond me, but that's the case. And the reason for this, ladies and gentlemen, is because Eddie Hearn upped the ante. He let it be known that he's willing to let Demetrius Andrade cross over to their side of things if that's what they want. But they don't want that. It's for that reason that Jamal Charlo is nixing those kinds of conversations altogether. There's very little left to cover here that we haven't covered already.
It's a broken record.
I don't know what Jamal Charlo thought he was doing by calling in and answering those questions, but all he really did was make it that much more obvious that he is Al Heyman's slave. And just speaking of Daniel Jacobs, per Michael Benson, Eddie Hearn has said that there have been talks for a potential Daniel Jacobs versus John Ryder fight at the end of May. Other possibilities for Jacobs are Billy Joe Saunders or Callum Smith. Whoever doesn't get the Canelo fight, in which case, at least by now you guys might have heard that Callum Smith reportedly rejected an offer to fight Canelo Alvarez in May, and the rumor mill seems to be spinning that it was due to the money. Does that bring us closer to a Jacobs versus Smith fight? I'm really not sure, because Callum Smith has been acting quite the prima donna as of late. But in the event that Danny Jacobs can't pin down Callum Smith for a fight, well, I'll take Jacobs versus Ryder. I think that's a sensational fight. I think that fight has all the potential to be a real firefight, because John Ryder really showed his quality in his last fight against none other than Callum Smith. He showed that he is every inch the top 10 super middleweight that he's ranked to be, that he's no one to look past, no one to take lightly. And it just so happens that in Daniel Jacobs' super middleweight debut, he didn't get the rounds in that he needed with Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. because Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. decided to Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. What do I mean by that? I mean that he quit. On paper, it looked like a good little event that Daniel Jacobs will be able to debut in the super middleweight division against a very familiar face with a very familiar name, and in that, he would be able to earn his stripes now that he's at 168. But all of that fell short of the mark when Julio Cesar Chavez decided to go home early. Against John Ryder, he would have a more game, more dedicated, more tricky fighter in front of him. I think that this is a chance for Daniel Jacobs to not only acclimate to the super middleweight division, but perhaps even win over some more fans over there in the UK, because there are a lot of people over there across the Atlantic Ocean that think John Ryder won that Callum Smith fight, or at minimum earned a draw. There are a lot of people that are of that opinion, so just imagine if Daniel Jacobs goes in there with that same John Ryder and looks better than Callum Smith did. I think that might go a long way towards winning Daniel Jacobs even more fans on that side of the Atlantic Ocean. I do wonder, though, where would it be best to stage such a fight between Daniel Jacobs and John Ryder for no world title at all? I mean, Danny's got a name, he does, and it is a familiar name. But I wonder, could you get people to show up for a fight between him and the likes of a John Ryder who's a very formidable fighter, albeit, on this side of the world, an unknown fighter? Would Danny have to get his passport out and fly over there to the UK where, the fans might be a little bit more receptive? I don't know. I don't know where that fight would be best suited to take place, but that the fight is a good fight for the educated boxing fan who follows more than just the big names, the familiar ones. For the educated boxing fan, yes, this very much is a fight that you can appreciate. So if Danny can't pin down Callum and he can't pin down Billy, well, I'll take a John Ryder fight. Yeah, sounds like a good fight. Now, just in keeping with news that's coming out of the super middleweight division, as I stated earlier, Callum Smith and Billy Joe Saunders have rejected offers from Golden Boy Promotions to lock horns with Canelo Alvarez this May. And according to Eddie Hearn, it's because the offers sent to those fighters are below their market value, a market value that is established. Is it possible that the people at Golden Boy lowballed both Callum Smith and Billy Joe Saunders, that they sent a very underwhelming number to both of these undefeated world champions?
Yeah, it's possible.
Doesn't really sound like they got sent the multi-million-dollar offer that Sergey Kovalev got. Something to the tune of $10 million, I believe it was. Something around there. Doesn't really sound like that's what Golden Boy put up for either Billy or Callum. But without an actual number, it's very difficult to know if these fighters are asking for too much or is Golden Boy putting up too little. I mean, at this point, it really is just speculation. Pretty sure that Billy and Callum were expecting to get a number comparable to what either Daniel Jacobs got or what Sergey Kovalev just got. And perhaps that's not how Golden Boy looks at it. Perhaps Golden Boy says, you know what, Daniel Jacobs was in there with Gennady Golovkin before he fought Canelo. Sergey Kovalev, he participated in 2 pay-per-views, albeit not very successful pay-per-views. Better still, he's a name that people know here stateside, whereas Billy and Callum, They've got names, but they're not necessarily big names here stateside. If they've got names anywhere in the world, it is across the pond. It is in the United Kingdom. And if Golden Boy means to stage a match between Canelo and Callum, or Canelo and Billy here stateside, well, their market value here stateside may not be comparable to either Sergey's or Daniel's. Maybe that's the situation. Maybe, Golden Boy is starting low as a negotiation tactic. It could be that way. There is some importance, some emphasis that needs to be placed over who Canelo Alvarez fights next, because the Ryota Murata talks have fizzled out. These two sets of talk appear to be going in that direction as well. These talks appear to be fizzling out.
Yeah.
The pool of options for Canelo is getting thinner and thinner as May approaches. And Canelo's got to do something. You're the money man. You're the cash cow. You're the most notoriable boxer on this side of the Atlantic Ocean, so you need to act like it. Maybe you do need to compensate these guys a little bit to get them in the ring, because they are world champions.
They're undefeated.
If nothing else, that should warrant some kind of respect for what is a May 2nd fight date, the weekend before Cinco de Mayo. It's a pretty important time for the Mexican-American fans here stateside. The Mexican-American fans who have carried Canelo Alvarez and have gotten him to where he is today, made him the cash cow on this side of the Atlantic Ocean. He's got to treat them to something credible. You can't go in there and fight Joe Blow. You've grown too big to get away with that. I mean, if he thought people gave him a piece of their minds when he decided to shy away from the Golovkin fight all those years ago to drop down to 54 and fight the likes of Liam Smith.
Remember that?
This would be 2 times as bad if he did that now, having the most lucrative sports contract. Emphasis on sports. Not just boxing, not limited to boxing, but sports. All sports. Canelo's got the most lucrative sports contract of any athlete in any athletic sport. So there's not very many excuses to, not be able to go in there against somebody good. Somebody really good. Because you're already making the kind of money that you want to make. You're already making more money than everybody else.
Literally.
I don't think it would cost Canelo Alvarez all that much to get one of these guys in the ring. There's just very little excuses for it. But without a number, it's hard to tell. Let's see what happens.